Hello and thank you for joining me. It's been a little while since I've made a video now, and I wish it was on a more cheery subject, but I feel this is important to discuss. And when I started making YouTube videos a few years ago, I always told myself that nothing was off bounds, so I'm not going to shy away from discussing this issue. And that is about abuse, sexual abuse scandals that have been going on in this country. Um, There has been a controversial incident in the last few days, and it involves the MP for Bradford West, Naz Shah. Now, she actually liked and shared a tweet, and this was hard to believe, but she actually liked and shared a tweet that was condemning victims of abuse in towns like Rotherham and Rochdale, and saying that they should shut up for the sake of diversity. They should stop complaining. They should stop discussing the ordeal that they went through for the sake of diversity. She liked and shared that. Now, I'll come back to Naz Shah in a second, but not long ago, a few weeks ago, another Labour MP, Sarah Champion, done the exact opposite. She tried to advocate for those victims. She tried to say there is a problem here. She happens to be the MP for Rotherham. Now, she was doing her job. She said there is a problem. We have to discuss the problem of British Pakistani grooming gangs. So, what was the response? Jeremy Corbyn sacked her, or at least suspended her. I'm not sure what the formal decision was, but she was punished for speaking out. Naz Shah, so far, nothing has happened. This cannot be right. Now, Jeremy Corbyn's reasoning for sacking or suspending Sarah Champion was that it's unfair to generalise all British Pakistani men, but that's just the problem. She wasn't doing that. She had written an article in The Sun in which she said there is a problem within the community, which is absolutely true. She didn't say all British Asian men are predators. If she had said that, I could understand the suspension because that would be inflammatory and it would be wrong. But she hadn't said that. She had spoken, she just said the truth that there is a problem within the community. Now, one of the country's most prominent British Pakistani men, Sajid Javid, who is a former business secretary conservative, said he felt it was wrong for Jeremy Corbyn to do that, and others have also criticised it. But this, to me, sums up where Jeremy Corbyn is and the utter failure of the Labour Party under his leadership to take this issue seriously. And most of these are Labour run councils. Towns like Rochdale, Rotherham, and there's been others. There has been a specific problem with racist grooming gangs. I say racist because they genuinely see working class white girls as being fair game. They see them as being easy, as being loose. And let's be clear what we're talking about here. We're talking about organized abuse of vulnerable young women, sometimes girls, children. This is a heinous, destructive crime. Now, there has been prosecutions. A lot of these men have been arrested. Northumbria police have just had a big swoop and arrested a lot of them. But to suggest that, oh, it's just random people, there's no trend going on here is utter nonsense. Clearly, there is a problem specifically with Pakistani grooming gangs who do look down on their victims in a racist sense. So I don't accept the argument that, oh, paedophiles are just, you know, here's the thing. Of course, there are white paedophiles, and I'm going to get onto that in a minute. But whether it's a specific problem and needs to be addressed specifically now, so far the attitude to this has been to denounce anyone who even talks about it as being a racist. So those MPs who have spoken out have been denounced as racists. They've been accused of stirring up racial tensions. And yet you get the likes of Naz Shah. It's not the first time she's attracted controversy. The fact that a sitting MP would like such a disgusting tweet that is blaming victims of crime, that's trying to silence victims of crime, is utterly shameful. I looked at her Facebook page. She hadn't mentioned anything about it. So the last post she had was congratulating Pakistan on 70 years of independence. So my thinking is, if okay, I'll play the devil's advocate. Maybe her account's been hacked, right? I decided I'll play the devil's advocate, see where this leads. But so far, that hasn't been her line. She hasn't said, "Oh, this was a mistake, something was taken." She said nothing. Now, if you're accused of something like this, you're either going to stand by it because you really believe it, or you're going to deny it. She's done neither, and that's quite strange. But there has been an enormous amount of criticism, understandably, levelled in her direction. And if Corbyn doesn't take this seriously, it will be yet further evidence that this man is totally unfit for leadership. I mean, he is punishing MPs who tell the truth, and he's seemingly doing nothing about those. And it would not surprise me because Naz Shah is one of his allies. It's just internal Labour Party politics going on here. And that is an utter disgrace. Naz Shah should be utterly ashamed of herself for liking such a vile tweet. And if she didn't, if her account has been hacked, I mean, to be honest, no one's even suggested that. I'm just putting it out there because it is so shocking that a sitting MP would commend something like this. But like I said, it's not the first time she's been in hot water. She criticised Sarah Champion, so frankly, it wouldn't surprise me if that's her position. And I think it's utterly disgusting. Shame on you, Naz Shah. Shame on you. I think if anything is a sack-worthy offence, surely it is a sitting member of Parliament telling victims of crime that they are to blame. It's utterly repugnant. Now, on the issue of racism and generalisations and so on, it is an absolute disgrace that anyone who talks about this is immediately denounced as a racist. There are members of the British Asian community who are trying to speak out about this. I have come across community activists and so on who have tried to speak out, but I feel that they're climbing a mountain because too many people. I mean, the other day I was accused of racism because I was criticising Jeremy Corbyn, and this Asian woman decided to have a go at me and said it was racism, even though I said I don't believe that all Asian men are like this. I don't believe that all British Pakistani men are predators. I made that very clear. Oh no, not good enough. You know, she still wanted to smear me as a racist and deflect. Now, this is not the only problem going on in society. Not so long ago, there was a problem exposed of white Irish travellers abusing slave labour, where they were kidnapping often vulnerable young men, and in some cases, really sickening abuse for years on end. And because their victims have learning difficulties, because they're vulnerable people, they haven't been able to sort of get out of that until recently and until these cases have been exposed. That is equally sickening, equally evil, and the people responsible should face very, very, very long periods behind bars. I mean, to hold another human being in servitude and to abuse them in that way, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not even going to say the words that come to mind for those sort of people. So that's a problem within the traveller community. But I've no doubt if you talk about that, oh, it's bigotry towards travellers. As a society, we have to be prepared to talk about taboo issues wherever they are found. Wherever they are found. That also includes high profile celebrities. We all know the Jimmy Savile case. We all know that for years he was kind of protected by the establishment because he was a popular entertainer and because he brought in a lot of ratings and so on. We must have a situation where nobody is involved at all. Nobody. Um, and it's an utter disgrace. In all of these cases, there has been a culture of silence and a culture of cover ups and a culture of complacency. In the case of British Pakistani men, there has frankly been a complacency from the community because anyone who's tried to talk about it has been dismissed as a racist. Not everyone in the community has taken that attitude, but too many have. Secondly, and it has to be called for what it is racist abuse because these gangs see the vast majority of their victims, with one or two exceptions, are working class white girls. It is a racist attitude that they have, that they're loose, that they're fair game. Um, Within the white Irish traveller community, that has to be spoken about. Within high profile potential predators at the BBC. The BBC got very red faced from that, but it was a little too late. Only after Savile died and he could never face justice. And it was the same with Rolf Harris. This does not mean that we should go on a witch hunt and point fingers without any evidence and just say, oh, I don't like this person, so I'm going to call him a paedophile. Um, Mob justice is a very ugly thing, and I would never advocate that. But I do think that when cover ups and complacency happens, it understandably angers people. So, take, for example, this thing with British Pakistani grooming gangs. If there are racial tensions, I would suggest it is the Labour Party being politically correct. I mean, this is literally the phenomenon that has caused the authorities to be reluctant to do anything about it. That's why too little was done to date. Um, in the case of Rotherham, because all the authorities were worried about being called racist, they felt the greater necessity was racial harmony. That's why justice wasn't done, and that is an utter disgrace. But I feel where actual racial animosity comes about is actually with cover-ups. It's actually when there isn't justice done, because if these situations can be processed as fast as possible, if the victim's testimony is listened to, if evidence is gathered, arrests are made, that to me would actually limit racial tensions because then it is done and dusted. Then there's not enough time for apologists to go and say, "Oh, you're just blaming Asian men," and it wouldn't fall on MPs to have to go out of the box and tell the truth. Sarah Champion should not be punished for telling the truth. That is a disgrace because she was not generalizing all British Pakistani men. That's an important point. She wasn't saying all British Pakistani men are this. She was saying there's a problem within the community, and that is absolutely true. It's like saying there's a problem in London with black gangs. There is. Does that mean every young black man is a knife thug? Of course not. There's a problem with Islamist terror. Does that mean that every Muslim is an Islamist terrorist? Of course not. There is a problem with white neo Nazi thugs, white supremacist skinhead idiots. Does that mean that every white working class lad is a white supremacist? Of course not. So, yes, we should be careful not to generalize. Yes, generalizations don't help anyone, but nor does shying away from controversial issues. We have to discuss these things. And it makes me so angry that this is a tale of two MPs. One MP tells the truth, she's punished. Another MP advocates a despicable tweet that is blaming the victims, and so far nothing has happened. Corbyn hasn't responded to it. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in coming days. If he actually shows some leadership for once and actually accepts this is wrong, I cannot have one of my sitting MPs endorsing this abuse, you're fired. I honestly think this is a sack-worthy offence. I don't think that an apology would be enough here, because Naz Shah has escaped many other controversies scot-free, but she happens to be a Corbyn ally, and that just shows how petty Jeremy Corbyn's politics really is. For the many, it's actually about tribal politics. I mean, the problem with this is whatever benevolent sort of policies that Corbyn can come up with. And I've said before, I am not against all his policies. There is some genuine, compassionate social policies there that I would support. But it isn't enough. When I raised this on the Labour Party Facebook page, someone said, "Oh, what has this got to do with whatever the issue was?" Now, it's true that has no connection to the issue at hand. But members of the public raise these issues on the forum of a political party because they won't do it themselves. And the other thing, I'll just close with this, I will not be surprised if Naz Shah turns around and tries to make herself out to be the victim and says, "Oh, I'm suffering racist and sexist abuse, how awful it is," without showing any humility or remorse for what she has done. Of course, I don't condone threats online, but I do think that sitting MPs, some of them, frankly, are starting to play the victim when people criticise them. They should remember that as legislators, they should have tough skin and they should be in a position where they understand that people are going to criticise them. And I know sometimes that can get quite ugly, but frankly, in this case, I've no sympathy with her. None. Because what she has endorsed is utterly despicable. Okay, I'm going to round this up, but just a few closing thoughts. Yes, I agree that we should always be careful not to generalize an entire community, but it is equally important the taboo issues are discussed and that when people raise these issues, they're not immediately denounced as a racist. To me, it should be just as much of a stigma falsely accusing someone of racism or throwing that word around as the problem is itself. It shouldn't be acceptable that whenever anyone discusses a controversial issue, they are immediately denounced as a bigot, especially if they're white. I mean, this is just a fact. If you're a white person, it's far more easy to be slandered in that way than if you're a minority, because of its nature. If you're a minority, you can just say, "Oh, but I'm a minority," and I think that's rubbish, incidentally. But I do think that the impact of smearing a white person with racism is deeper than impacting anyone else. So Sarah Champion, as a white MP, for her to be smeared as a racist simply for trying to tell the truth, is disgraceful. She was doing her job. So as far as I'm concerned, Sarah Champion should be reinstated, um, and Jeremy Corbyn needs to prove that he's taking this problem seriously. So far, the Labour Party is, with one or two MPs exception, has shown that they're not prepared to take this issue seriously. Corbyn, like he always does, will say, "Oh, we condemn paedophilia, we condemn it generally." Not good enough. Where there's a specific problem, in this case, Asian grooming gangs, it's not enough to say, "Oh, but there's white paedophiles as well." Of course there are, and it's equally evil, equally despicable. And where there is any evidence of white grooming gangs, that should be discussed. But there is a problem going on, and to try and just silence it, it's just wrong. And unfortunately, we live in such a politically correct era. I don't even know if YouTube will try and censor this video. It's just really sad that we're in an era where you cannot even tell the truth without idiots trying to silence it as racism. Okay, let me know your thoughts. And for the sake of progress, I would ask you not to sort of say, "Oh, all British Pakistani men" or whatever, because it wouldn't necessarily help this. All I'm trying to do is say that there is a problem out there. I don't believe every British Pakistani man is a predator, and I know there have been guys that have spoken out, like Majid Nawaz and others. Um, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a problem. And to any left wingers who want to comment and say, "Oh, I'm getting involved in dog whistle politics," I would say you're wrong. You're wrong. And the onus is on you to explain why you think this shouldn't be discussed. It's a complete disgrace that political correctness is now used as a weapon to prevent justice.